Okay, we're officially at 8:30 p.m. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. How you all doing? Good to see you all here tonight. A couple quick announcements. In the back there, we have CDs. Please help yourself. We have over 1,000 of them burnt. Get a hold of them before they become obsolete. We also have a Facebook page, which will also give you the link to our YouTube page. So all our speakers are recorded, placed up there. And also, speakers from the Monday night STEP and Literature meeting are put up there. They're little short talks, probably 25 to 30 minutes on a step. They're always great to listen to. There's flyers on the back table back there, and if you care to bring any flyers or any events, workshops, whatever, other groups, announcements, please feel free to put them on there, and please feel free to take those flyers with you. Our sister group is Big Book Study, meets on Thursdays, 7:30 p.m., like half a block from here. 186 East Court Street, every Thursday night. We go line by line. We're into reading this big book and applying it, trying to inventory where we're at, what the program tells us, try to get free so we can help others to achieve that and experience that. One other thing to be mindful of, in the last, I'd say, 2, maybe 3 months, this group has personally given away well over 125 big books to treatment centers, people in treatment centers, and thanks to your donations and contributions, you've made that happen, and there's a big book donation thing back there on the counter if you care to donate to that. We have an on-running commitment every Sunday night, treatment center in Quakertown. If you'd like to get involved and carry a message there's no requirement for time or sobriety or anything like that. If you're willing to be of service, just let us know, see us after the meeting. Anyway, let's have some fun tonight. We got a great speaker, and we got a pretty darn good chairperson. Let's welcome Brian up here. One last thing, sorry about that, I forgot about this. We have a home group sign-up sheet. We'll pass this around if you care, if you want to be on there. It's important because when we do workshops or if we have anniversaries, we can notify you. So we'll pass it around.
Thanks, Ron. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here in the church. The purpose of this group is to provide consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Hey, Logan.
Sunday, August 7th, the Hudson County hosts for fencing fly at the Open Equal AA. We're having on Sunday, Monday, ice cream social. It's the Shell Fund United Methodist Church. It starts at 2 and ends at 6 p.m. There's a panel of speakers, ice cream, 50-50 raffle baskets, $10 suggested donation, $5 if you go to the store or recovery house. We'll see you all there.
Nice. Thank you, Logan. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purpose of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or any home group member before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And now we have welcomed Dana to come up and read the preamble.
Hi, my name is Dana. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any cause. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And Sam's going to come up and read the steps.
Hello, I'm Samantha and I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. 9. Made a direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Saw through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for His knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The seventh tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no fees or dues, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, workshops, etc. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I would like to introduce the speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Group, Chris D from New York.
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Chris. I'm just going to go into airplane mode here. Okay. Thank you for having me, Ron. Thanks for asking me. And Brian caught me boning up on the big book before the meeting. I didn't want to, not be able to fool everybody. So I just want to get some material down pat in my head again. When the last time I was here was about 4 years ago, so that was like 14 years ago for most of us. But 4 years ago, 2018, my wife was pregnant. And so now we have 2 babies. We got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, where they're turning 4, turning 2. And so that's why I'll be falling asleep about 17 minutes into this talk. It is what it is. I mean, I feel like a lot has changed in that 4-year period, right? Most of it has been me trying to figure out how to work a program and at the same time be, a dad. And, man, it's like I learned a lot about, how not to do that very well, really, I think that they would have appreciated me not being around as much, I really tried to be like a present father, and I think it would have been a lot better if it would have been, just go to more meetings, just get out of here and go to more meetings, and, and with everything that kind of happened over the last 4 years, and I don't really want to get into that so much, but, my program took a hit. I know a lot of people that I've spoken to have, their programs took a hit. Me and Ron were just kind of talking about that. People just kind of faded away, the rooms closed, and then, people just kind of stopped doing some of the things that they did before. And I was no different. You know, I had a lot of those things, and then becoming a dad was like really a challenge. So it's like this really huge, amazing, awesome gift, of course. But it's another role, you know. It's another hat that I'm gonna now put on and trying to, like, you know, figure my way through. And I don't have any experience with it prior to 4 years ago. And, you know, I didn't take nearly as much of the program with me in doing it. You know, like I remember working with a young guy who, you know, he was a chronic relapser and stuff like that, and he was really doing well. And I remember, you know, like he left the thing that we were working with him at, and then he came back a few weeks later, or maybe even a couple months later, and you know, he said something. I just said, you know, how's things going with your sponsor? And because I knew that he had a sponsor, and he was like, yeah, we haven't really clicked yet. We haven't really gotten into, you know, doing this stuff. And he was like, but once I settle this stuff over here, once I get the stuff done with with the ex-wife, like arranging things with the house, like we got to finalize that stuff, and then I have the girlfriend now, and she's got 2 kids, and the 2 kids got to go along with my 3 kids, and so we're getting the house together, and the work stuff, I got all the work things. So, I mean, as soon as I get all these things in order, that's when I'm going to do the steps. And I remember saying to him, like, you know, you do the steps to handle life. You know, you don't do life and then do the steps. The steps is what we're going to use in order to actually be able to do this thing. And, you know, I forgot that advice. You know, I was not really doing that. I was like trying to kind of like, you know, make my way forward. You know, and it was a bit of a challenge. You know, it occurs to me that, you know, that guy actually, he didn't make it. They found him dead, you know. So it's interesting that just like, you know, those types of things just kind of come to mind, you know, at certain times, you know. So anyway, sober date, February 21st, 2007, which means I got about 15 years or so, right? I didn't start there. You know, I had a half a dozen relapses before I got to that place. And I think that, you know, I don't want to talk about a lot of stories, but one story I'll share is I had 11 days sober. And when I had 11 days sober, I was working as a doorman at the time, and I was working the 4 to 12 shift, and so I got off at midnight. It was a Sunday night, and I was hungry. And I was thinking about where could I go to get something Sunday night, midnight. Now, I'm from New York, and so I don't know if things are closed down out here at like 9:30 or 10 or whatever, but in New York, I mean, things are going to be open. But still, Sunday, the kitchens, they might not be open, and I was thinking I'd like to have a cheeseburger, and the best place for a cheeseburger is Skinflint's in Bay Ridge, right? And Skinflint's was a bar in Bay Ridge, a bar that I had been in a number of times sober, because I had had periods of sobriety prior to that. In fact, I never drank in Skinflint's. So I was really just hungry and wanted a cheeseburger. I had a phone call come in from my then hostage that I was seeing on and off, and you know, we had a colorful conversation on my way back to Brooklyn, and then it occurred to me that the kitchen might not be open at Sunday, so let me call them. So I call Skinflint's, and they say, yeah, the kitchen's open till 1 a.m. And I said, okay, great, and I hung up the phone. Notice I didn't order my cheeseburger. So I pull up outside Skinflint's, I walk in, I ask to see the menu, I sit up at the bar, there's maybe 2 or 3 guys down this end of the bar, like chatting, and you know, you could tell like they're boys with the bartender, you know what I mean? And there's one guy on the Joker poker machine over here, and one couple at a high top table over here, and there's one lone drinker on this side. So I post up right here to make sure that I was socially distancing back then, even before, you know, anybody knew anything. I just, you know, make sure that I have enough space, you know, with just this number of people in the bar. And I have no intention of drinking. He comes over, I ask for a menu. I look at the menu, I order a cheeseburger and onion rings. And now I'm waiting. I'm just waiting for my cheeseburger and onion rings. And I look over and I start watching SportsCenter. And suddenly the thought came to mind, do you really want to be sober right now? Because if you're going to wind up getting drunk like 6 months from now, you might as well just start drinking now. Now, this is a bad place to have this kind of thought. If I was at a meeting or something, or if I, that's okay. But I'm sitting at the bar, and that thought starts to play in my head, because this 11 days of sobriety that I just had came after I had just recently relapsed 11 days ago, And that relapse followed, like I had almost 2 years sober. And here I was with my 11 days, and I was really happy with my 11 days. I wasn't, I wasn't here to have a drink at all. And so I'm just watching SportsCenter, and I guess I'm mulling this over. I'm just waiting for my cheeseburger, and then I just shout at the bartender to bring me a beer. And so he comes over, he brings me a beer, he puts it down. And I remember, the thought just before I took the first sip was, now I'm only going to have this one. And this was bolstered because I'm driving. I mean, I really want to try and convey this message as strongly as I can, okay? That I came into AA when I was 17 years old. And I didn't just kind of dip my toe in the water when I first came in. I had 3.5 years here, making meetings and the commitments and doing the deal. And, when I say doing the deal, I don't mean doing the deal the way that I do the deal now. I mean doing the deal the way I did the deal then, which was the way that the deal was suggested at the time. And I was following suggestions. I was doing pretty good in that regard, So 3.5 years, and then I had some pockets of time here and there, but then I did another almost 2 years. And so from the period of like 17 to 23, most of my time is in AA, including going to a treatment program for 28 days. And so, there's a lot of sober experience. So to fall for, I'm only going to have this one, is ridiculous. Right? It is ridiculous. I remember hearing Joe Hawk on a tape one time saying something along the lines of, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? And of course, I've run that past, all my sponsees and things like that, and I've done groups and things with, usually working with men. And, so hundreds of guys. And you can imagine how those conversations go. What's the craziest thing you've ever done? And we're playing it fast and loose. Everybody just, shouting all these stories. And then we get down to, given all of the experiences and all of the years of drinking. In my experience, it was, and all the AA experience. I came to the place people go to stop drinking and drank again multiple times, right? And then here I was, sitting in the bar, just there for a cheeseburger, and the thought was, I'm only going to have this one. And I fell for it. I fell for it again at that point. And there's another concept that kind of gets thrown around, is like the idea of, I know where this drink is going to take me, Or anybody here, we might say, like, I know, what getting drunk today, what that's going to mean, or where that's going to take. I had no idea what was going to happen after I had that first one. What I can say happened was I had the first one, and then the night turned out to, it was the kind of night that was pretty typical, I had 4 beers before the cheeseburger came out. And then I got in the car, and I went to the bodega. I stopped and got, a 12 or an 18 or something. I went home, and I drank until I threw up, passed out. And that was a normal night back in the day. And this seemed like a pretty winning, like nothing bad happened, so to speak. But that led to like 40-something straight days of drinking and other substance use. So it wasn't just that one, And what are the typical lies that we believe before we have that first one, whatever the crazy thought is? But like, that's the craziest thing. The craziest thing I ever did was drink that drink again on that thought, And thankfully, I made it back, But when I say I made it back, I want to be very clear that I say I made it back like I was in the ocean, drowning, and, blacked out and wound up on the shores of AA again. It wasn't like I deliberately, I think today's the day I'm going to put it down, boy. No. I thank goodness I got back, and it had very little to do with me. It was just kind of the circumstances and how they developed. I can say 5 days before I hit this bottom, I was really setting things up to go on the run of all runs with said hostage mentioned earlier. And we were getting, we were just getting crazy. I called out sick from work. I made sure to go to a doctor to get a doctor's note so that I knew I was going to go on like a run here, so I wanted to make sure that they thought like I was dying. And so, I'm setting that up on Friday afternoon. And then, Friday, hit the ground running. We drinking, some other things that I thought for sure, I thought I'm going to die. Really, we're in this basement apartment in Brooklyn that I, was renting, and I was just like, I am going to die tonight, is how it felt. And then I thought, if I don't die, she's definitely going to die, And then it was just like, how am I going to explain that? What am I going to do? And I was like, in a stupor to this point. I felt paralyzed, that I could not do anything about the fact that here I am thinking I'm going to die, and I just, continued, and she continued, and that was it. I did not die. The next day, I remember sitting at the table and sitting at my splintered, wooden dining room table, doing what people do at tables. And I have, the refrigerator stocked up and, all that. And I had that kind of thought that maybe I should try and reference it. Now, I didn't have this language at the time, but on page 25, where it says, we were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, to accept spiritual help. Spiritual help was not on the table. Okay, I really recall having this feeling after, getting back here and reading that passage and thinking about that time, that I was legitimately thinking I'm just going to try and blot out the consciousness of my circumstances. This is going to be my life. I'm just going to be this doorman who, tries to hold on to this job for as long as I can to just pay this rent until I get thrown out of here and I lose that job and I'm, getting, there was a Dominican place near where I worked that made this, this beefsteak and, rice and beans. And it would cost $6 or $7 or $8 or something like that. And I can make that into 2 meals. And I just thought, this is going to be it. I'm going to eat this twice a day, and I'm just going to try to just blot out the consciousness of my life as it is. And it was really just settled. It wasn't like I was thinking AA is right around the corner. Why don't I call intergroup? It really was just, this is going to be what my life is. The 4th day, I don't really remember. The 5th day, I thought this is going to be the best night ever, because it was her idea that we go to a strip club. And I was like, this is really amazing. And so, I was like, this is the best girl ever, right? And we have all, whatever, the accoutrements of a strip club journey. We're, on our way to the strip club, and she stops off at one of these, adult stores, and she comes out with a thing, and I think, this is really going to be crazy later. And, she's thinking about, we're going to seduce one of the girls to come home with us, And I'm just like, I can't, this is not my idea, folks. This is not my idea. I just really was like, this is really something. And now, it's probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning in the strip club. I am, not in the kind of shape where you want to bring 2 women home. Anybody is familiar with that? So, Now, we leave, I call one of my best friends who was a cop at the time, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I say, hey, Dan, when does the shift change? When do the cops go change their shift? And he's just like, I can't do this with you right now, right? So he just hangs up. So we get in the car. I'm driving I don't even know, like a 95 Suzuki Sidekick with no muffler, okay? That I have to pour. I had jugs of Arizona iced tea that was just 2 jugs of water that I would pour into the radiator of the Suzuki Sidekick in order to get it going, right? And we start driving home from this place. We don't have a girl in the car with us, it's just me and her. And we are on our way back to my basement apartment in Brooklyn. It's about 1.5 miles. And a cop pulls right in front of the Suzuki Sidekick and goes the entire 1.5 miles. And I'm just following, and I'm in my head like, should I turn? But if he sees me turn, then he's gonna, double back, and I just gotta play it safe, play it cool, and I just, follow him, and then he turns on West 10th Street, and I turn on West 12th, which was my block, right? And I park the car, and I'm just like, whoa, that was close, and I realized I didn't have the headlights on the whole time. No headlights, rumbling down the street, no muffler, right? So then we go in the house, and she goes into the bedroom, and we're just, having this wild and crazy time, but it's really not going well. It's not going nearly as well as I thought it was going to go. And this is when I realized what she went into the adult store for, because she came out of the bedroom wearing it around her waist. And it was then that I thought to myself, I was like, when did this go so wrong? This was way backwards from where I thought this was going to go, And nothing happened, although I did black out a lot, so I don't know, there are things I just don't remember, I don't know. So now it's like 11 o'clock in the morning. I have my last $100, and I make a phone call to a pal who can bring me some dry goods. And I hook up with him at 11 o'clock, and that's my last $100. And I remember, again, here I am now, it's 11 o'clock, and I'm sitting at that table, and I have what I have in the fridge, and I have this, and I had this thought. Well, I didn't have the thought yet. She came barreling out of the bathroom, unhappy, and crazy. And she takes one look at me and she says, why don't you just take a break? Just slow down. And I had lost the power of speech at this point. So I couldn't answer her, but the thought that I had was, I can't slow down. I'm going to do everything in this house, or I'm going to die trying. And so again, going back to skinflints 42 days ago, or whatever it was, I had this, this realization where it's just like Alcoholics Anonymous 101, It was like, oh, I can't stop. And it was like, did I have to go through all this to come to that realization again? That I can't stop. That as soon as I start, I can't stop. And so then that thought followed, like, I'm just going to finish everything in this house or die trying, and that's a win-win. Because at this point, I didn't really care if I lived or died. So that was, and then, whatever. It's now 7 o'clock, and I pass out at some point, and somehow it wind up coming to, whatever. It was like a Wednesday morning, and there was a 12 o'clock meeting, and I never woke up before noon, And on this particular day, somehow I woke up. She had gotten a call from someone, and it was her sister. Her sister was in AA, and it was just kind of like a confluence of events that, we wind up going to this meeting. And it was at this meeting when I cried real tears at the meeting. I just had this kind of emotional break, and which you may experience at the end of 42 days or whatever, and I was just there, and I just, crying, and she was there with me, and it was like, we're going to get through this, and it was like this, rah-rah talk. I had to go to work. I call my mom, and, I tell her, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and she just, just like, hang in there. My mom is sober. She's, I don't know, coming up on 50 years or something like that at some point, sometime soon. So, it's just like, hang in there. It's a day at a time. I called my old sponsor. Same thing, you just call me after you go to work. And it was just like real basic and simple. And, like I couldn't take my eyes off the floor everywhere I went, And I'm just talking about this day of just like, I just was just feeling so low and so, beat up. But, a little bit hopeful for maybe something can change. And then I come home and she's there and she's drinking and going and I just like, I saw it in that moment, and thank God I saw it, and it was just like, you gotta go, and so I not only, it was just like, we just gotta stop everything needs to stop right now, or I'm not gonna make it, and so that was screaming and whatever all the way through to the morning, and then she left, and and I didn't talk to her again. Is essentially, we're talking about a hard stop on everything. And I just started going to the midnight meeting in New York City, if anybody's familiar with that, Midnight Madness at midnight. So, like it's a 12 a.m. meeting. And like I said, I was doing 4 to 12s, and so midnight was the earliest meeting I could make. I was, regularly waking up right at like 2:30 in the afternoon, and just rolling out of bed and rushing to get to work just on time and not get docked, and do my 4 to 12. And then I made midnight and I started counting days there. And I can tell you that time period, especially those early days of this, like I was hanging on for dear life. I really didn't know if I was going to be sober later today. Like at those times, like I really was just like, and everything was so, there was not a lot of hope. There was not a lot of happiness receptors firing in my brain anymore, So it was like in a really deep, dark hole that I had to come out of. And it was like really, truly just the action of going to a meeting every day. And just putting one step, one foot in front of the other. I spoke to my sponsor, and to being as granular as possible. Maybe a leg up was the fact that I had a sponsor immediately that I could call, right when I came back, but him just saying, you are going to, take a shower, brush your teeth, go to work, go to the meeting, I'll talk to you in the morning. And to have that level of direction to be like, okay, like that's what I'm gonna do, and like slowly but surely just doing that until eventually the scales tipped where I felt better during the day than I did hopeless, and that was probably like day, I don't know, 35, 36 or something like that. Like maybe I just kind of like started to feel like maybe this can work again. And I was at midnight, and then they had a 2 a.m. meeting. And sometimes I stuck around because what the hell else am I doing? I don't got anything going on, right? So I make the 2 a.m. meeting, and the format at the 2 a.m. meeting is anybody can speak. And so it really got wild, sometimes at 2 a.m. But so I took the meeting with my 35 days. And I remember, just because I had come to AA for so long, like I had How It Works memorized. And one night I really couldn't sleep, and so I was just like talking about how I just fell asleep by just like reciting How It Works, like a maniac, just like, and eventually, and some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. And I was like, oh my God, like I held on to all these ideas. And I went to the meeting and I just talked about, and you know, when people come back from relapsing, there's always like this kind of like shame or like this bad feeling of like, you know, like they've done something wrong, and you know, and then there's also this talk about like why it's going to be different this time. It's going to be different this time because X, you know, and it's almost like we're trying to talk ourselves into believing it, you know, and I was just really beating myself up for having relapsed, you know. And this guy at the meeting, he was like, look, you had to drink every drink that you drank to get to where you are today, and that's 35 days sober, right? And it kind of relieved a lot of the pressure and stuff on me at the time. I was like, yeah, like, I needed to do everything I did to get to here. Now, having said that, that's my story as an individual, right? That's my personal story. But going back to AA 101, if doing the deal when I first came in involved doing the steps with a sponsor, then theoretically, at least as my experience shows me today, theoretically, I never would have had to have gotten back there to learn that lesson again, to get to the place where I had to see it firsthand at the end of 42 days to say, oh, I can't stop, you know? And that seems like real rudimentary stuff, but there I was learning that lesson the hard way again. When I had 5 days sober, I remember, you know, it was a snowy day in Brooklyn, and I was smoking a Newport and sitting on the, you know, the concrete steps that went to my basement apartment, and just I had my head on the concrete slab here, and snow falls on my head, and I was just like, I mean, really just bad shape, you know, like thinking about it now, like I probably needed medical attention, but I just, you know, grit and bear it. And then I had this thought that was just like, maybe you missed something in We Agnostics. That was legitimately what I was thinking. I said, maybe I missed something in We Agnostics, because I never really read that chapter. I never understood it, you know. It was just one that, like, it's just the concepts of it just seemed whatever. And so I finished my cigarette, I go inside, and I start reading the first paragraph, We Agnostics. It says, in the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. And then I had an epiphany. You want to know what an epiphany sounds like? I read that and I said, huh. That was it. It was like, holy cow. Like, I never saw that. It was like, oh. And that was like maybe like hope point number one, you know? And then I got to 35 days, and then I moved on and all that stuff. And then when I had about 11 months, I was down to one meeting a week, and, you know, was just, you know, out of my mind in a lot of different ways, wasn't doing so well, very standoffish. I was certainly a guy, like, in the meeting. I was that guy that if you saw me at the meeting, it was like, just don't even go near him. You know, don't even talk to him. That guy, just leave him over there. And that was me at 11 months, right? My 6th time around. So I'm barely hanging on at 11 months. And so what went wrong? I'm still doing it the way that I had always done it. Which, you know, like, I don't know. There's a lot that I missed, I guess. You know, there's a lot that I missed in coming to AA. But I think that I thought that this had a lot to do with me, and it doesn't, right? It doesn't have a lot to do with me. It has to do with helping others, primarily, right? And getting out of self. And that getting out of self is not going to be a thing that I'm going to do by myself. I'm not going to be able to do what the steps are suggesting on my own. That's just not how it's devised, right? I'm not going to get what the happy people are getting, right? by me continuing to believe the delusion that somehow, some way, I am keeping myself from drinking today because I'm being a good little boy and I'm doing the sitting in the chair, and they tell me to like share at the meeting, and so I'm like sharing and I'm making the coffee and I'm getting involved, and don't misconstrue what I'm saying. All of those things are super valuable, especially in the early going when you're first here. But if that's what becomes my reliance, right, which inevitably I am going to move away from those things. I check the box. I did that one, I did that one, did that one, did that one, did that one. Why am I still this way? Right? And it's not working. And then you're only going to be able to sit here for so long with it not working before you do the inevitable thing that you know works. So if I'm not getting the benefits of being here, it just stands to reason that I'm going to take my chances on the next lie that makes sense. The next lie that I'm insane enough to believe might be real. It might work this time. It might be different. That's pretty much the biggest one. The biggest one that I've seen over and over. It's going to be different this time, right? And if I'm insane because I haven't worked the steps of this program, that's an easy one to fall for, I used to fall for it all the time. That's the whole thing about the, insanity that we're talking about in the second step, is I'm insane enough to believe that silly little lie, even though I might have years and years and years of experience, personal experience, that proves otherwise. I'm not able to call that to mind with sufficient force when it's go time, So, one paragraph that's really been sticking with me recently, this is page 34. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop, right? So how much time did I spend going through the motions when I wasn't even really desiring to do this? A better line is in step 3, where it says, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of wonderful things followed. And when I got to step 3 with my sponsor this time around, which took 8 years, by the way, right? So 8 years, I finally got, look, there was some solid progress made. But when I got with my sponsor, who did the line-by-line big book deal, asking me questions out of the big book, and I really applied my experience to what I was seeing on the page, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of wonderful things followed, and I had to hold back a tear, and maybe a little one snuck out, because I realized in that moment, even in the 8 years that in this time around, I've never sincerely taken this position. I'd never sincerely decided to be here for real. I was just going through the motions because it was like, this is what you have to do. Because it's like, I can't live out there. Like that jumping off place, and it's like, so God, if you make AA purgatory, it's not going to work. That's pretty much how, it's like AA, I don't want to do any of it. Really, the resistance level, and that's really the solid indication that you're in the right place. If you feel like me, that's who this is designed for. The 12 steps are designed to break down just about the most resistant form of human being imaginable, an alcoholic. It's the first step. Is the first step for a reason. It's because it's the hardest. It's super duper hard for some reason. And I think that it's as hard as it is because of what's contained in this paragraph. It goes on to say, whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. Every time I came into AA, All 6 times I came back with one day, I wanted to be here. I desperately did not want to go back to living life the way that I was living it. I truly, wholeheartedly wanted to be here. And then somewhere along the line, I wound up drinking again. In my opinion, this is why. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. This utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. So what this is saying to me is that wanting it really has very little to do with getting it. Needing it has little to do with getting it, right? What it really comes down to is, have I conceded to my innermost self this most baffling feature? A baffling feature, which means it makes 0 sense. I cannot come up with a solid explanation for it. The only thing available is to simply accept it. I have lost the power to choose whether I will drink or not. So it's not about the crazy that happens when I'm drinking. All of us kind of get that part. We inherently get that. A lot of people will talk about, like, oh, I got step 1. I did, right? I got step 1. I know I'm powerless over alcohol. And the reason why they're saying that is because of the aspect of, I don't have an off switch. As soon as I have the first one, I have no control, I have no idea what's going to happen. All that stuff, we all get that. And then we come in here and we think that we're doing all the stuff that we're doing, and then I'm saying, and now I'm choosing not to drink today. And we're fooling ourselves into thinking that we're choosing not to drink today, and that's why the result of this day was, I didn't get drunk today. Look at this power of choice that I've suddenly developed. When really what it has to do with is the actions that I'm taking. It just so happens that those times when I wasn't having a drink those days, I was at the meeting, or I had the commitment. I was making the coffee. I was being the greeter. I was involved at that level in some kind of way. And then, slowly but surely, I stop doing those things, and I fall into the delusion, because I believed it all that time, that I'm just not going to drink. Because somewhere along the way, I guess I found some newfound power. You know, this is what's the kind of term, like inside baseball or something like that, but this is how my sponsor explained this to me. And so I don't know if he would like me doing this live. Is this a special thing that he's supposed to do only with his sponsees? I don't know, but it was impactful for me. And so he said, imagine that you're driving down the road, you're in the middle of the highway, and you're going 65 miles an hour. You're cruising right down the middle lane, 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the steering wheel pops off in your hand. And he says, do you have any control of the car? Now, there's some diehards in here that might be thinking, well, have the brakes failed? Do we still have the brakes? So just to get rid of any debating, okay? You tap on the brakes and the brakes are non-existent, okay? Oh, bad. This is bad news, okay? So now you're going 65 miles an hour down the middle lane in the highway, steering wheel's in your hand, not connected, no brakes. Do you have any control of this vehicle? Now, the answer is no. So he's drawing my attention to the fact that if you don't have control, then that is synonymous with you don't have power either. You don't have the power to get this car over to the side of the road. You might want it to be on the side of the road. You might really need to get it to the side of the road. That would be safe over it, but you don't have the power to do it. And so the last one is, so do you have a choice? Can you choose to get the car over to the side of the road? You know, there were more resounding head nods on the first question. And the second question was kind of pensive, but that one, it was like dead silence, no motion. And it's interesting because we don't want to relinquish the choice part. And if you're really clever, like I was, you would say, yes, you do still have a choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, if you take a look at it, you go, you can choose to get the car over to the side of the road. You can say, here's my choice. But you don't have the power or control to do it. So imagine if the car winds up somehow safe and sound, nobody hits you, and you get pulled over, and you just kind of slow down off to the side of the road, and nothing bad happened. And you thought that because you chose to do that, that's why it happened. You would really be in a bad, bad place if you think that that's what got you there. You know? That you wanted to stop, and then it stopped. Safe and sound. When I fully conceded to my innermost self that point, that essentially what we're talking about when it comes to the powerlessness of step one is that I'm going to drink again. Me on my power, if I'm just on my own, I'm going to go drink, because that's what alcoholism is all about. If there aren't actions, and so, you know, I've had a lot of epiphanies and things where I've garnered new understanding and all of that stuff, and I forget who said it, maybe it was Bob B. who said, you know, insight is overrated. Just gaining insight is overrated. You know, you're far better off with making progress with what you do than what you figure out. The actions that you take is what's going to dictate what's going to wind up happening in the future. And so the gift, right? The gift, and when we get through working the steps and into step 10, when the step 10 promises where it talks about, you know, we're placed in a position of neutrality. We are safe and protected, you know? Like we've been restored to sanity. The way my sponsor described it, it's like I would no sooner drink today than I would punch a baby in the face. Because it's crazy. I've been restored to sanity. I don't know if anybody in here can relate to this, but whenever I'm at a height, like if I'm like a 12-story building and I like look over the edge, I hear a little voice that says, jump. Not so many? All right. Well, as evidenced by the fact that I'm here, I've never jumped. I've never jumped. I've never been so crazy that I have listened to that voice in my head that says jump and just leapt off the building from the 12th story. It's never happened. But every time this brain said, drink, I went and got drunk. Every single time. So being restored to sanity by going through these steps, it doesn't mean that I never have the thought. It means that when I'm just, you know, I'm here early and I'm cruising around and I'm looking at Doylestown downtown and I'm looking at, like, you know, a bachelorette party going into the bar over here, I might think, you know, go have a drink. And you know what happens? I wind up speaking at the meeting that I'm going to tonight. I didn't have to, like, feverishly call my sponsor or drop down on my knees and say some quick prayers and please God, take this away from me. None of that stuff happened because I've already done all of the actions, and I continue to do the actions that make it so that that is insane. I've been restored to sanity as a result of working the 12 steps out of the big book with a sponsor. And it's really amazing, you know, when you think about it, because to have hundreds and hundreds of examples in my personal history where if I have a thought like that, I'm in there. In my past, if I have a thought like that, I literally blow off whatever it was that was happening. You know, why I was at a thing, what I was doing, none of that matters because I thought it and now I gotta go do it. And so, yeah, coming to AA, going to meetings, working the steps, it means that that thought is far less frequent, which is also awesome. I don't think it very often, but when it does come, it's just like any other thought because of what the steps and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. And the last thing I'll say, just as a plug, is, you know, I wouldn't be here without sponsorship. You know, I wouldn't be here without that sponsor taking that time to take me through the big book the way that he did. You know, that truly saved my life. And I didn't know that, you know, my life needed saving in that kind of way. Because up until he did that, I was under the delusion that I was doing a pretty good job, right? So when I went through, that changed everything. And I think that, it's probably the greatest gift that I have been given is to take people through the book now myself and, watch the change happen and watch it be like, reliable. It's crazy. When you think about all the stuff that's out, just the social media sphere and how people talk about addiction, recovery, whatever, and the reliability of sitting down with another alcoholic, getting into the big book, and taking them through the steps, and watching their whole life change, and that they don't drink anymore, for real, as a result of doing that. I have 15 years. I have my sponsor that, a sponsee that, was with me, he's got 14 years. Another guy with 13, a guy with 12, and then, a bunch of other guys that are in like the 5-year period because I started to go through, that was when I was trying to, figure things out. But all of these guys are still sober because we all went through the big book at various different times, So I have the personal experience of what it's like to come here and, have the story be what the story is always going to be when you walk back in and you say, well, what happened? How come you relapsed? And, nobody actually asked that question. But if we had to answer it, it'd be like, well, I stopped going to meetings. And it's like, yeah, but what didn't you do? It's like, I didn't do the steps. That's like 100% the story. And then the flip side is, I've never heard anybody talk about how, well, I came to the conclusion to my innermost self that I was powerless over alcohol. That means I'm both powerless over alcohol when I drink it, and I'm powerless over alcohol when I'm not drinking it. Left to my own devices, I am likely going to drink again. I am insane in that way. I sincerely took a position where I wanted to be here and do this for real, and I decided that I was going to stop playing God. I decided to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself, and I didn't need to understand that then. Again, I didn't have to figure anything out, I just needed to do what was put in front of me to do. And so then my sponsor had me sit down and write down some stuff, and I wrote down some stuff on resentments and fears and sex conduct and harms done, and took a look at all that stuff, and then I shared it with him. And when I shared it with him, I identified all these defects of character and how these defects were running my life. They were really just driving the bus of my whole existence. Everything was being driven by all of these defects of character. And all of the harms that were done were because of the actions that I took. It was all self-inflicted wounds. All of it. So I make it right. I go and I make amends to people, and, I restore that part of the universe where I did this thing that was really bad, and it's like, somehow I get to where I would have been if I had never done the harm in the first place. That is how incredibly powerful the amends process is. I get to where I would have been. If I do it thoroughly and I do it wholeheartedly and I really make amends where I want to make it right, I get to be accountable in a way that wouldn't be available with any other process that I've seen. And I've really, really investigated a lot of different things. And it really is incredible. And so now I'm going to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear as they crop up, ask God to remove them, tell somebody about it, look to be helpful, turn my thoughts to where I can be helpful, meditate on a daily basis, pray on a daily basis, look to help some other people. And then, as I was sitting there reading the big book with a guy across from the table with me, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I got drunk. I've never heard that story. I have never once heard someone describe that was all of the things that they were doing, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. There I was at the bar, 4 drinks in. That's been my experience so far. That because I got into these steps and I just did it that way, and man, oh man, has it been imperfect, like I started with. Being a father was challenging, my program took a hit, and still, because of the gift that I was given and building that thorough foundation, the first step, I'm still sober today, crazy as I am at times, but not insane enough to drink today. Thank you.
Let's thank Chris one more time. Always a pleasure listening to Chris. He comes all the way down here from New York on his own time and expense. It's customary for us to form a line. Thank him personally for coming down to our group and sharing his message. We got another New York speaker. I always love the New York guys. Can't get enough of them next week, so don't miss that. What else we got to do? Help us eat some of them cheese dogs back there and cronuts and hang out after the meeting. If you're struggling, come talk to somebody here, please. See us afterwards. There is a solution, and there's a meeting after the meeting, so hang out for that. If you'd like to help us up, these chairs here go on the rack. The chairs at the table stay. Let's take a moment of silence, and then we'll close with the Lord's Prayer if you care to join us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power,